And so if you want something unique and rare and different in a world full of G-Wagons and Range Rovers, you pull up in one of these and people just lose their minds. I mean, it's no exaggeration. It's an experience, which is scary because for my daughter, she's only 16, right? And so she constantly had people roll down the window. What year is it? They want to talk to you about it. But it's, for our clients, they tell them it's probably the coolest thing. They feel like a rock star.
You're listening to My Supercar World, a Post Oak Motor Cars production from Houston, Texas.
Hello, everybody. Diane Kaplan here, My Supercar World, along with my handsome co-host, Lonny Souza.
Hey, everyone. How are y'all?
How are you doing, Lonny?
Doing well. How are you?
Did you have a good weekend?
I had a great weekend, yes. My weekend was, doing honeydews, and I got to watch you and Liz in Miami, like hanging out with all these supercars and superstars. So,
well, you know, someone has to live the life.
Right.
Well, I'm really, really excited because you and we've had a bucket list of guests that we've wanted to have on, and we finally have got our calendars adjoined, and we have got the founder of Vintage Modern, which Chau is like, we just think he's amazing.
Yeah,
and what he's founded and stuff, and we're so proud to be partners.
Absolutely. I mean, look, we've done a lot of these shows recently, and we've kind of had you on the list, Joe. We've been eager to have you on because we know that this is probably going to be the most watched show.
I think so too.
We're gonna air, because I think everybody's going to be interested in what you have to say.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome, Chau. So, I mean, obviously, Lonny and I know the backstory and stuff, but kind of give our listeners, what is Vintage Modern? How did you start it? What was the passion behind it?
Tell us your story.
Yeah. Well, there's a fascinating story behind this. I'll take you back to, kind of the beginning. Growing up, I was a car fanatic. I was obsessed with cars at a young age. I was that kind of kid where, we'd be playing kickball and a car would go by and be like, wow, that's my car right there. And, I think when it comes down to that, you either have that or you don't. And I was definitely one of those kids. And another important thing was that I grew up with no money at all. And so, wanting and desiring Lamborghinis and Ferraris and Porsches when you're a kid with no money, you kind of go one of two paths. It's never going to happen, or I'm going to make it happen. And I was truly motivated to succeed in life just so I could buy cars. So that's a really important part of the story.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. I went out and busted my butt, worked really hard, and made money. And I started buying cars. So I've had over 50 cars since I was 21, and pretty much every car you can think of. I've had like Ferrari, Lamborghini, Aston Martin, McLaren, AMG, everything. And I'm also a serial entrepreneur. And so what happened was I sold one of my companies, retired in my early 30s, and my wife said she did not want to hang out with me breakfast, lunch, and dinner 7 days a week, and that I needed to go do something else. And so I decided to go check off a car on my bucket list, and that was the 1970 Ford Bronco. I always wanted it, thought it was like one of the coolest looking cars ever made, but every time I got close to buying it, I was honestly afraid because I'm not a mechanic, and I just didn't want to deal with, any of the problems. And so I decided I had some time on my hands, bought the Bronco, and in my driveway, it looked great from 10 feet away. Everything else about that car was just very bad. Wow. So steering was loose, brakes didn't work, leaked everywhere, broke down, and it made my wife's hair smell like gas. So she wanted to take her out on date night. And my kids were young at the time, and she didn't feel safe with my kids in the back of that car driving to school. That's if we made it. And
right.
So she was like, it's me or the Bronco. And I told her I was going to keep both. And it really went from that moment of, dream car, classic car, broke down, and I couldn't live with it. And I was like, why can't the car just look vintage, but operate like a new car? And that was the very origin of like everything, was just the desire to fix my own problem. I never intended for vintage to be what it is today. It was just solving, a major inconvenience that we're so spoiled by modern day reliability engineering. It's hard to go back in time.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many questions.
No,
to ask.
I mean,
from there, it's okay. So you've got this vintage Bronco, which is has been like we've seen them. There's so many companies now that build
So many resto mod companies.
both full restorations, resto mods, and they're pretty pricey. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I've seen personally some of the most expensive builds out there. And then when you actually get the final product, it's pretty much still the same description you just made. Very cool, beautiful.
Yeah, it looks great.
Yeah.
But
And I think there's some great builders out there that do the best quality they can, but it still smells, it's still loud, they're still problematic. I mean, I have clients all the time trading them in because of that reason. So we know why we feel the same way that you do. So what was the next step? So we know where you've been. Now where are you going with it?
Yeah. So the evolution was first just to fix my own car. So partner with a mechanic, started diving to restoration, and I sold that Bronco and I missed it, and so I bought three more and said, you know what, surprised my wife. And got a few more, and I said, you know what, I'm going to do this because I just like doing it. It was passion. Right? At that point, I enjoyed it. I learned a lot about the car, and so we started off in restoration. And restoration, as you know, is rehabbing the car back to the way it was,
Right.
and that left a lot to be desired. Again, for the modern car buyer, they're really too spoiled to go back to in the 1970s. So quickly decided that restoration is not what most of our customers want, and that the only thing vintage about it that they really wanted was the way it looked. And
Right.
so we evolved at that point the company, which is now a personal vehicle that I was restoring to kind of a passion project side hobby business to now a real business where we were taking doing restomods, which is modern restoration. And you have a modern chassis, modern drivetrain, new body, and built a factory, built an assembly line, built a team, and basically figured out how to build what I believe to be one of the highest quality restomods on the market. And meanwhile, this amazing thing started happening on social media. And that's what that is right there. That's a real time counter of our followers that updates every few seconds. And so at first on Instagram, I was just taking pictures and video because I loved the car.
right.
And then all of a sudden, there it goes. I watched people fall in love with it too. And I thought, wow, this is interesting. And it wasn't, a small group, it was a big group and it kept growing and growing. And it got us on the map, and that's how we met our clients like Jennifer Lopez, Mark Wahlberg, LeBron James, and all kinds of people. It's fascinating what social media can do. And at the same time that our social media was blowing up, we're building these vehicles. And the feedback that we got was that they were beautiful cars, but at the end of the day, a Resta mod still is going to be confined to the geometry of an old car. So it's still going to drive like an older car. It's not going to ride like a new car, and you don't have any modern safety features. And so as we got bigger and bigger, it was pretty clear that our customers wanted more. What they really wanted was a vintage looking vehicle that had zero reliability issues, that drove like a normal modern car, and had safety features because women and women with children wanted the vehicle too. And so we took a big bet, and that bet was to, instead of restore a car or do a resto mod like our competitors were doing, we took a modern car chassis, and instead of trying to make an old car more modern, we took a modern chassis and we made and built a vintage car on top of it. And therefore you get new car reliability, new car technology, new car drivability, and you got safety features, which is a big deal. So 6 airbags, traction control, anti-lock brakes, crumple zones, all the things you don't find in any classic car. And we unveiled that to the world last year, and it's been a crazy, ride and a huge hit. So we've been very fortunate, and it's all from a mindset of how do we make it better, and that's how we got here.
Wow, that's amazing. Like,
Yeah.
and we had the pleasure when we first met of actually being at your factory and
Right.
seeing the assembly of these vehicles,
Which
right?
has grown tremendously since you went
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
I mean,
I heard.
so proud of what Chau's accomplished.
Absolutely. So, is there a particular chassis that you like to build off of?
Yeah, definitely. So we started with the new Ford Bronco chassis, and it just made sense. It had the right dimensions, it had all the technology, it had all the reliability, and all the safety features. So it was only fitting that we used the new one. and therefore you truly get the best of both worlds. So we start every build with a new Ford chassis.
Would you describe that as more of an upfit? I know this is a much bigger project than what it sounds like I'm saying, but would that be considered an upfit since it's a new vehicle chassis already and you're coming out with changing the body and some other things on it?
Yeah, I would say we took it to the extreme that no one's ever done before. Typically the upfitting is, some wheel suspension, but we basically kept the frame, the drivetrain, the safety features, the technology, and everything else is either we made and manufactured or modified heavily. And so, but at the very core, you're riding on a new modern, Ford chassis, which is, it's a 10 times improvement over any Restomod or any restoration.
Oh yeah. I mean, after driving it
and we've driven both. So
yeah, I mean, I would, again, everybody loves the actual vintage model, but in today's society with today's roads and freeways, I mean, you couldn't drive that on the freeway and feel safe. The wheelbase is a little too short and it's a little too wobbly. But if you lived in a beach town or you were in a small neighborhood driving around, that'd be great. I've driven your vehicle, actually for a few weeks in a row as my demo, and I drive 100 miles a day, and I had it cruising up 90 miles an hour on our tollways with no hesitation, no fear of losing control. It was a phenomenal experience.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think too, at the price point that we're at, the customers are used to luxury.
Yeah.
They're used to quality. They're used to safety and technology. They're spoiled, right?
Yeah.
When you daily drive a G-Wagon or a Range Rover or a Rolls Royce, you know what good looks like. And so it's hard for them to go back into time. But in general, I think the audience of buyers today have changed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like to do what we do today, if we had done that 20 years ago, it would have been sacrilegious, right? Like at that time, it was all about collectors and purists, and it was all about numbers matching and all original. And I think that those buyers still exist out there, but it's a smaller niche. Today, the car should just work, right? People aren't wrenching on their cars like they used to. And, buyers want to jump in, hit a button and go and not be stranded on the side of the road. So it's a big unlock. And I think we're really opening up a whole entire new market. It used to be that to own a classic car, you typically had a love-hate relationship with it.
Right.
You loved the way it looked, and you kind of hated all the quirks and all the problems and the smells and all that stuff. And so to be able to give people both vintage design and the reliability and luxury technology part, it's really amazing. Like I've been really proud of every delivery. Like the customers really love the product, and these are customers that own really nice cars, and they say it's their favorite. So, so it's pretty rewarding to go through what we've gone through because it's been very, very hard and challenging to get there.
Well, I mean, let's talk about customers. Like, who do you find who are buying these?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, what we're known for are all of these celebrities and athletes and billionaires and all the people that buy our vehicles. But the majority of our customers are just people like you and I who love classic cars, but they have a higher standard and they have maybe family or they actually want to drive it or take it to the lake or the beach. So they want to use it, I think the typical classic car owner before, they only drove it on that perfect day when it was sunny and it wasn't going to break down and they could be late and they could call someone. With this, you just get in, you don't have to think about it. So today, our customer is anyone that has excellent taste in vehicles and can afford the vehicle.
Right.
And that market has opened up big time because before there are a lot of buyers that would not buy a car without airbags. There are buyers that would not, buy a car at this price point and not be able to drive it or feel safe putting their kids in. So the market is huge, and it's really anybody that can afford the vehicle that has, an eye for design. And the design is just absolutely beautiful compared to, a lot of today's modern cars.
Yeah, it sounds so. It's an ownership experience. It doesn't really have to be planned for. Like you said, those classic cars, you have to plan ahead. Okay, this is what I'm going to do this weekend. These are the things I need to do to prep for it. This is how far I can go. Right. And where this car, you can get in and drive it every day if that's what you want to do.
Yeah. And that really resonated with the buyers because in the beginning I sold every vehicle and I talked to them and I knew exactly what it is they wanted because I was the buyer. And and their wife was like my wife, right? She would be mad at me when I start the car because the entire house would smell like gasoline.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to be able to give the customers what they wanted before they even knew what it was, I think that's really probably the biggest part here is that we accurately predicted what our customers wanted, which was they wanted no compromises. And then on top of that, they want to know that if anything happens, you're going to stand behind it. And that's one of the problems with typical classic car restoration restaurant shops is that they don't have full blown, warranty and service. And so we view this as if you buy a vehicle from us, we will roll out the red carpet, before, during, and after for you.
Right. So let's talk, let's kind of go back a little bit and talk price point. So we know that a true restoration vehicle done right, I mean, just stripped down basically to the ladder frame and then rebuilt back with brand new parts, about $250,000.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get into the full resto mod where it's just brand new from the ground up, about $250,000. So what price point are we talking about with your vintage modern brand?
Yeah. So the base price is about 250,000, and then there's a variety of options that you can choose from premium stereo to custom paint colors, teak wood. There's a lot of options. And what's really fun about the vehicle is that you can customize it in so many different ways that for as many as we built, you actually haven't seen one or two that are actually like. They're all a little bit different. And I think that's part of the fun part for our clients is that they love to customize it. I mean, we've done all kinds of stuff, pink shades, lavender, or beachy colors, and they all kind of have their own little nuances that make them personal for the clients.
Right.
I think Diane, we were talking earlier, you were going to ask about how involved customers were.
Yeah, like how involved do they get into, or do they really rely on your team to help guide them through that bespoke experience of building them out? It's Lonny and I mean, our clients with Bentley and Rolls-Royce, they're used to that, and they're very involved and already kind of come to the table. And I know you've got an amazing configurator and stuff, but do they lean on you too, especially because it's not a car, unless you find a dealer such as us that has 2 or 3 and, on the showroom floor, they lean on y'all to like, okay, what's really going to look good?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's kind of 2 buckets of people. There's people that they know what they want.
Right.
They've been following us for a long time. They've been obsessed, with like, I want a Brittany blue with a white interior and chrome trim, and they know it from day one. And then you have people who they don't know. And so we have a concierge, a designer that actually works with them and helps them pick out the colors. And I haven't done the math on the number of permutations that we have, but it's a lot. So you've got almost too many choices. But the configurator really helps too because it's so realistic that you can exactly see, what it looks like with stripes, without stripes, chrome trim, black trim, different color soft tops. So we have fun with it. I think that's really a lot of the fun part for our clients is that, down to the color of the grille, the color of the dashboard, the color of the stitching, the roll bars, there's lots of customizations that you would really rarely find unless it was like a super high-end vehicle that was bespoke.
Well, while we've been talking, we're going to be showing these pictures of everything we're talking about to the viewers as we continue our conversations. But I got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, everything you deliver is in a soft top. Will there ever be a hard top option in the future?
Yes, there will be a hardtop option. We actually have a hardtop, lightweight composite, multi-piece hardtop that is super vintage looking, but fully modern and seals that won't leak and all that. But that is a TBD on the release date. You really have to get the top right because you can't have water inside.
Right.
So everything we do, we are maniacal about design and engineering and testing. But yes, there will be a hardtop.
I'm asking for a friend.
Yeah.
Nice.
I ask him all the time. I know.
So we have the vintage modern chassis that you have out right now. Is there any chance of any future iterations of other classic brands coming out?
Absolutely. And that'll be the fun part. So we do have a couple models that we have in R&D. And, we really took our time to figure out what that next one was. And so there's a 100% chance that we'll release additional models, but no chance we can share it yet. But we will.
Aw.
I can come back on the show and show it to you guys. But, the whole goal is that we want to be able to give people who've always dreamed of owning a classic car that they've always wanted, and they felt the same way I did, which is, well, you know what? I don't know if I can deal with all those problems. And we're very selective and thoughtful about which ones those are. The design is very important to us. It's classic inspired design, all built on a modern chassis. So more than likely, it'll be later this year that we'll announce it. So
Well,
Okay.
love
looking
to
forward to
do that here at
that.
the show.
I know.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, I have a question though. What's been like your biggest challenge scaling up to where you're at now?
Okay, yeah, great question. Um, so when we think about the business, there's people, there's process, and there's parts, components. And the challenging thing about building a vehicle is you have to get all of it right. I come from a technology background, so I
Right.
built software. And if the code is wrong, the app crashes, right? No big deal. You open it back up and then we fix the code with a new release. With a vehicle, it's can be fatal, right? So we take it very, very seriously. And of all of the hard types of companies you can start, automotive, car
Yep.
company has to be way up there
Right.
to do it right. And because I didn't come from automotive, I think that gave us a huge edge because we didn't come in with any kind of limiting beliefs or any kind of that's how it's always been done. If anything, coming from technology, which is one of the most innovative spaces, you ask the opposite question, which is why can't you do that, or how come that hasn't been done? And so I think that really helped because when we started the process, and we shared the concept, vendors looked at us like you're crazy. That's not going to work. And so to be able to do this, you have to get all of it right. And people, process, and parts um, have to all work together to produce the quality product. In the beginning, especially, all of it's wrong, right? And you may have the right people, maybe the wrong position, or you got the right people in the right position, but there's no process. And so we literally started with nothing other than knowing where we wanted to be, which is perfection. And it's a high, high bar, right? And so I'm the kind of person where if it's a $250,000 vehicle, it's got to be perfect. I know exactly what it is I would want, and I wanted to deliver that for our customers. And so there was no easy way around it. We just had to get through it. And that's through building enough volume and hiring the right team and running a process. So with every single vehicle, you ask what could be better, what process change, what people changes, what component changes. And in the beginning, it's totally true about how hard it is. Like you have to obsess over, you have to love it, which is a big thing we look for in our team is passion. And so if you
Right.
get great people who love what they do, okay, great. Now you've got that foundation. And then every time you build and every time you go through the process, you're gonna inevitably in the beginning say that that's wrong, that's not right. And so we basically just painstakingly, day by day, week by week, month by month, went through. And I think you have to either just love it so much or be crazy. In this case, probably both, to be able to go through that. And it's hard because in a vehicle you get everything right, but that one little $2 part that didn't clamp that hose right, and the car's not going to run. And that was it was just a puzzle, and the only acceptable outcome was that we would just keep refining it until it was perfect, and that's what led us from restoration to restomod to a true modern classic. And we're still not there. Like the word perfect gets used a lot, and that's our goal, but we're never going to settle. And our people today, this team that we built, the culture, they're obsessed with quality. They love what they do. They want it to be better. And so I feel like in the beginning, as a founder, you are ultimately in a game of survival, and you have to be relentless. And you can't. There's no shortcut to it. You just have to go to that pain. And
Hmm.
so when I describe it, it sounds painful because it was painful. But then you reach a tipping point, and
Yeah.
when you have a great team and you have the right process that you refine over a period of years, and you find the right vendors who know quality, who know what you're looking for, then it's magical. You hit a tipping point and it works. And so that's where we are now. But we're never satisfied, and so it's a never-ending journey to perfection.
I mean, perfection is probably the right word. I've been to your factory, and I call it a factory because it is not. When people watch TV and they see the different shows of Resto Mod shops, I mean,
Right.
it's a shop. I mean, there's cherry pickers here, there's frame machines, there's all kinds
Right.
of crazy stuff going on, and your factory is nothing like that. It is, and I've been to several other manufacturing car factories, and it's very similar. There are assembly lines, there's inbound, and there's you got the whole process, and every station has basically their computers and of what to do next and what not to do. You can't go to the next step without
And
without inputting
uh-huh.
data, and it gives you feedback and it shows you instruction on how to do things. It's amazing what you have going on there. And again, so much, so far beyond any, and I used the word upfit earlier, but it was just to kind of gauge where we're at. So far beyond upfitting, and
Hmm.
more closer to manufacturing a new vehicle.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think of my role as not CEO, but chief problem solver, right? And back to, in the early days, you have problems galore
Yeah.
everywhere. And if you're programmed a certain way, you just won't sleep till the problems are gone. And for everything that isn't perfect, there's a reason why, you know? And if you really get good at root cause analysis and understanding, okay, was this a people problem, a process problem, a vendor problem? It could be anything. We would just literally just investigate every single thing maniacally until your problems go from here down to there. And ultimately, if you have good people, you got to give them a process. A great example of what you're referring to is most builders. Um, they may be kind of more in a shop or garage environment, and they do things by memory and feel, which is very common. And during our restoration days, we did the same thing, right? But when you build a vehicle and there are hundreds and hundreds and thousands of steps, um, memory and feel will not be able to get you to perfection.
Right.
And so, for example, if we have a bolt that we're going to tighten and we don't have a torque spec for it, typically what a shop will do is, on a certain day, the guy will spin it to like 25, foot-pounds, right? Or maybe, one day is 30, or one day it's only 16. If it's too loose, it's a problem. If it's too tight, it's a problem. We call out every single step of work instructions, standard operating procedures, and a torque spec for every nut and bolt. And the reason why is because we want our people to win. And if you don't tell them exactly what it is they're supposed to do, then they're going to have this varying level of of variation. What's nice for them too is that if it says 25 foot-pounds, then that's exactly what it is, and then we check against it with our team, our quality engineers. And I think that one of the early lessons we learned is you cannot inspect for quality at the end. Everyone, just about everyone I know, and we did it too in the beginning, everyone does that. So you build the car and then you figure out, well, what happened? What's wrong? Why is
Hmm.
it not doing what you want it to do? It's almost impossible to do it that way. Instead of inspecting for quality at the end, you build quality into it. And then that way at the end, you're really just, you know, quadruple checking that everything's good, and then it goes out the door. That has been a huge lever for us because you pay upfront more pain, more work, more everything in the beginning. But then what it allows you to do is create a repeatable process, and you can have confidence because we warranty these things ourselves with a white glove, concierge level service. Like if something goes wrong, it's a vehicle, we fly our traveling technicians to their home. So to do that, we have to be pretty confident, and we're very
Hmm.
confident. So, but it's all about our people, our process, our parts. We don't have that, you don't have anything.
Well, I know you're very confident in your product because I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, your daughter just got one, a custom
Yeah,
one, which I
yeah,
think is a one of a kind.
yes, yeah. I laugh because I'm kind of embarrassed to say that because I grew up very differently from my kids. They're very fortunate. And I remind them of that since they were a kid, since they were little kids. I would not normally buy my daughter a vehicle at this price point, but my wife talked me into it, and we got her a we got her a one of one edition Wimbledon white metallic, never been done, custom interior. Schumacher, if you know Schumacher, makes amazing textiles and did a really nice plaid interior. And on her 16th birthday, she got that car and she drives it
Wow.
around, and it's
Wow.
amazing to hear her reaction. I mean, it's the experience of driving one of these, you feel like a celebrity. I mean, people love the car.
Uh,
Men, women, children, young, old, foreign, domestic. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you don't even care about cars. You see the car and you're just like, wow,
Oh
what
yeah.
is that? That's
It puts a
beautiful.
smile on your face. You
Yeah.
know, it's one of those
Yeah,
cars that
yeah,
makes you
it
just
really does.
smile.
And it's the right kind of attention, right? It's not like a bright yellow Lamborghini, although I've had those too and I like them too.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of understated, quiet luxury.
Quiet
If you
Yes.
luxury.
know,
Yeah.
And it also says a lot about the driver. Um, it's a piece of art, and there's something beautiful about classic design compared to modern day vehicles that you don't see very often. And so, if you want something unique and rare and different in a world full of G wagons and Range Rovers, you pull up in one of these and people just lose their minds. I mean, it's no exaggeration. It's an experience, which is
No.
scary because for my daughter, she's only 16, right? And so she constantly has people roll down the window. What year is it? They want
Right.
to talk to you about it. But it's, for our clients, they tell them it's probably the coolest thing. They feel like a rock star, and you make a lot of friends, meet a lot of people, and it's really just a true experience
Well, I know
that
some
most
rock
most
stars you
cars don't
have
give you.
delivered a car to.
Say it again.
I said you've delivered some rock stars some of these cars too.
Yes, yeah, yeah. We have a very fascinating, lineup of clients.
Yeah.
But I've never met, a Bronco lover I didn't like. So it's a really,
Like-minded
really
people,
cool
right?
part of the
Yeah.
part of the business.
Yeah. Okay. So since we talked about your daughter's first car, what was your first car?
Oh gosh, my first car was a 1988 Chevy Corsica. It was white with like a maroon velvet interior and a big dent in the side of the door. And God, I was embarrassed to drive that thing. I think I parked it in the back of the parking lot, like behind a building, so no one would see it. But
Oh,
yeah, that was my very first car I got as a kid, and my motivation was to get out of that thing as fast as I could.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, I think you and I are both from the same part of town, Southwest Houston.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So yeah.
yeah.
So I know those older cars too. Mine was a 1976 Lincoln Town Car, coupe,
orange.
orange.
Nice.
Yeah. I think
Okay.
the doors were about as long as your Chevy.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's painful because the other thing that's interesting is I grew up with immigrant parents from Vietnam, right? And if you know what that's like, there's no luxury when it comes to anything, let alone cars.
Right.
Cars is like simply point A to point B.
Yeah.
And I would always point out cars, and my parents were like, nah, you're not going to get that. And why do you need that? And I think this is really interesting because my dad just visited me this past weekend and toured the factory for the first time.
Oh
Oh
my
He had
wow.
only
God.
seen pictures, and he was just his jaw dropped, right? Because I
Oh,
think he finally connected the dots of why, as a kid, I was constantly playing with cars, talking about cars, wanting cars. I remember being in the driveway in my house, my dad would be like, "Why are you always messing with your car?" And I was like, because I love it, And so I didn't know this all this time, but this is what I was born to do. All the other things were really just a foundation leading up that allowed us to be successful. But when you really truly love something, you have passion for it, it creates a huge lever and multiplier effect. But yeah, for sure, I think that that visit was really cool because my dad could see all those years of like my passion actually being channeled into my work, which is a beautiful thing.
That's amazing. And you bring the word passion up and we got
hmm
a question here. What advice would you give to someone who wants to turn their passion project into a real business?
Yeah, you know, I think when you really love something, you'll find a way. And I give an example of like when you have kids, before you have kids, you just don't know what it's like to be willing to just do anything for someone. And I think that what's really important is you shouldn't just go start a business. You shouldn't just go try to become an entrepreneur. And people say this all the time, and I really believe it to be true. The passion piece is huge because when you have that, it will it will make you relentless because you're not going to give up very easily. And the reason why that's important is because the hardest thing to do is to start a company. Everything goes wrong. And if you don't love it, it's very easy to give up.
Right.
And so the passion part is huge. So now let's say you have a passion for cars. A lot of people do. You don't have to go build a car company. Maybe you just want to be in the car business, right? But if you're passionate about it, I think the other part is that you'll learn. Because before I built cars, I never built cars. Before I built mobile apps in my previous ventures, I never built mobile apps. And before I started a company, I never started a company before. And so the ability to learn is really, really important because you can learn just about anything. And if you really love it, then no one has to make you do it. You don't have to force yourself to do it. You're just going to do it because you have to. And back to the survival thing and the kids analogy, Elon Musk says this a lot in his early interviews of days of Tesla. If you have a company, you have a child, you can't let it die. You can't let it, not eat and not survive. And so the amount of sacrifices that I personally made to build this company is unfathomable. Like I just don't care what time it is, what day of the week it is, how hard, it just doesn't matter to me. And I think that kind of relentlessness will help you defy the odds because the odds are stacked against you as a founder. And so the passion piece is just huge. I would, if it were me, and I was wanting to get in the car business, I would just start by starting. I would just, go to, whatever that is. Maybe it's something like a stereo shop, or it's a wrap shop, right? Or it's a car dealership, and you want to get into car sales. You just start from the bottom, and you just grind and claw and scratch and scrape your way up. Because if you love it, nothing's going to stop you.
I mean, amazing.
That's awesome.
Your story is phenomenal, inspirational, I think, in a lot of ways. Your product is just as much. And we enjoyed having you on this show, Chau. And we hope to actually, we were looking forward to having you on again when you're going to tell us what those next projects are.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a deal.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
I know. Yeah. Thank you so much for spending time with us. I know how busy you are, and I'm sure you got a million things going on right now. But thank you so much for spending time with us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolute pleasure, guys. In business, the partnerships and the relationships matter a lot. Anything to help you guys out, always willing to do. And you're great people, great organization. We're proud to be associated with Post Oak.
Well, thank you. Well, tell everybody where they can find find out more about your company and yourself. You have a website or an Instagram?
Yep. So our website is vintagemodern.co. And if you search up Vintage Modern on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, you'll see an entire sea of content out there in the form of pictures and video. And there's a configurator on our website as well. Formerly Vintage Broncos. So if you search up Vintage Broncos, you'll find Vintage Modern as well. And we are taking orders on our Modern Classic, and would love to make your dream car happen for you.
Well, I know.
For those of you watching, take your orders from
VintageModernTexas.com, or you can follow us also on Instagram, Vintage Modern Houston on Instagram. And I've got our 3 inbound cars on our website. So our next one is going to be a chalk gray color. And then we have Lonnie's Wimbledon white. And then I'm more excited because I finally am getting a blush pink one coming with white interior. I'm so excited.
Excellent choice. Yeah. You will not regret that.
Yeah,
Lonnie, you will drive it as well. Believe me.
I will have no shame. I can rock the pink.
Totally
real men wear pink.
There you go. You got it.
All right, Joe. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in for another episode of My Supercar World. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, My Supercar World, on our website, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Stay tuned.
See you next time. Yeah.
Bye.
My Supercar World is produced by Post Oak Motor Cars, where opulence reigns supreme in the heart of Texas.